You have found your way here. That is the only thing that was needed. The finding. The small, deliberate act of arriving at this hour, in this room, in this position, and choosing something other than the turning and the waiting and the effort of trying to make sleep happen on your own. That choice has already been made. There is nothing further required of you. Whatever the day was, it is over. Whatever it left in the body, in the shoulders, in the jaw, in the soft tissue behind the eyes, it is not going anywhere tonight. You don't need to release it before you sleep. You don't need to process it or sort through it or understand it. You can carry it right into sleep and let sleep do what sleep has always done. Quietly and without your assistance, dissolving what needs to be dissolved, organizing what needs to be organized, and returning you to yourself in the morning. There is nothing you need to do in the hours ahead, not to follow this story, not to remember it, not to stay conscious for any part of it at all. You can be gone before the first chapter has finished, and that will be the most correct thing you could have done. You are lying somewhere on a surface that is already doing the holding. All the weight of you, everything the day added, everything you accumulated in the body over the course of moving through the world is being received right now by something that does not get tired of it. That surface does not shift under you. It does not need you to be lighter. It receives everything with an absolute impartiality. The way earth receives rain, completely without preference, without condition. That is already happening, without your help, without your effort. Tonight we go to a city that has been resting for nearly 2,000 years. It is carved from the inside of a mountain in the desert highlands of southern Jordan, not built upon the earth the way most cities are built, but subtracted from it, carved by human hands from the living sandstone cliffs, one chamber at a time, over the course of several centuries, by people who understood something about stillness that most civilizations have never learned. The city is the color of a rose in the hour before dark, rose red and amber, and a deep breathing ochre that shifts as the light shifts, that deepens as the evening deepens, that becomes something you might call burgundy or rust, or the precise color of warmth itself when the last of the afternoon light has left the canyon walls, and all that remains is what the stone has been holding all day. It is very quiet there, quieter than anywhere you have been recently. A silence so complete and so old, it has become a kind of substance, not the absence of sound, but the presence of something else entirely. 2,000 years of quiet, practiced by walls that have heard almost everything and kept almost nothing. The canyon is waiting for you now, and you are already on your way. Before we walk anywhere, the body needs to arrive. Not in a hurry, not with effort, simply becoming aware of where it actually is, on a surface in a room, in the quiet of this hour, and noticing what has already been happening since you lay down. Start with the breath. You did not begin breathing when you arrived here. The breathing was already in progress. It has been in progress without your supervision your entire life, and tonight is no different. It does not need your attention to continue. But now that your attention has found it, you might notice it has already begun to slow just slightly, just naturally, the rhythm shifting from the pace of a person doing things to something closer to the pace of a person who has finished doing things for the day. Follow it for a moment without directing it. The rise and fall of the chest, the slight expansion of the belly, the pause at the top that is not quite a held breath, but something gentler, a moment of fullness before the easy release, and the release itself slow and long and automatic, carrying everything down and out. The breath already knows the pace of this hour. You can trust it completely. Now find the weight of your body against the surface beneath you. Not your body as a concept or a collection of named parts, but the felt sense of weight, the specific pressure of mass at rest, distributed across a surface that is receiving it without complaint. If you pressed your attention into the places where your body makes contact with the surface, you would find a warmth there, the particular warmth of two things in long contact. That warmth is not new. It was there before you noticed it. Move your awareness now to your shoulders. Just find them. You are not going to instruct them to do anything, only notice where they are and what they are doing, and very likely what you will find is that they are holding something, not because you meant to hold it, not because holding it was a decision you made, simply because you have been moving through a world that asks a great deal of the shoulders, the bracing, the carrying, the small constant adjustments of a person navigating a day. The tension there is not weakness or failure. It is evidence. It is the physical record of everything you moved through today, compressed into muscle. And that record has value. It means something was done, something was carried, something was managed that needed managing. And now it can rest. The surface beneath you is willing to receive what the shoulders have been holding. It is not asking you to release on command, it is simply available. And as your awareness rests in the shoulders, something that was slightly braced may find, without being instructed, that there is somewhere for the bracing to go, down into the surface, through the surface into what lies beneath the surface. Let that happen at whatever pace it happens. Now the chest. The front of the chest, which sometimes holds the weight of the day's concerns as though trying to protect what is inside from further exposure, and the belly, lower, softer, rising and falling in its own time. The belly breathes differently from the chest. It is less controlled, less performed, more honest perhaps in the belly. The breath is simply what it is. Move your awareness to your arms lying somewhere at your sides or somewhere beside you. Find their weight, the specific density of arms at rest, not reaching for anything, not holding anything. And your hands have been gripping things all day. A phone, a pen, a steering wheel, a door frame, a cup held too tightly, the edge of a chair during a conversation that required effort. The hands grip so automatically, so constantly, that the release of that grip can feel like a small event. And it may already be happening. The fingers spreading very slightly apart, the palm opening, the held thing, whatever it was, set down, open hands, not bracing for anything, not anticipating anything, simply hands at rest, belonging to a body that is finished for the day. The hips are heavy against the surface beneath you, dense, downward, final, in the way that only rest can be final, not the end of something, but the completion of it, the whole pelvis heavy, the weight of it moving into the surface and the surface receiving it all, without any adjustment, without any correction. The legs extending from the hips, the thighs, the knees, the lower legs, the feet, all of that weight, real and specific, releasing from the legs into the surface. Not limply, not collapsed, but released in the way a long-held breath is released fully, without remainder. Now your face. The face holds the day's social work, the careful expressions, the controlled reactions, the practiced neutrality, the held smile, the concentrated listening face. All of that is stored in very specific muscles, the jaw particularly. The teeth may be slightly touching, the jaw slightly clenched, and beneath the eyes, in the cheeks, in the thin muscles of the forehead, and that vertical line between the brows where concentration leaves its residue. Just locate the jaw for a moment, not to change it, only to find it. And in the finding, in the simple act of placing awareness there without judgment or instruction, something may soften, the jaw may drop very slightly, the teeth may stop touching, the tongue, which has been held against the roof of the mouth all day, doing the work of language, may drop gently down. The area around the eyes, so soft now, the lids have no task in the dark. They are simply resting on the eyes, which are resting themselves, very gently, very completely, and the forehead, that place between the brows, where the day leaves its last impression, as your awareness moves there, the impression can lift, not forced, not pulled, simply noticed and allowed to go. Your face is not holding any expression, not performing anything, not managing anything. The whole face, soft and anonymous in the dark, not tired, complete. The surface beneath you is holding all of this, every part that was asked to carry something today, every muscle that braced against uncertainty, every joint that bore weight. The surface has received all of it. It does not tire. It does not require you to be lighter. It does not need anything from you in exchange for what it is giving. And what it is giving is simply this: the permission to be held. You have been held since you lay down. You are more held right now than you were a few minutes ago, and you will be more held still in the minutes that follow as the layers of the day become, one by one, less necessary to maintain. Before we walk into the canyon tonight, there is something worth understanding. Not because you need to understand it in order to sleep. You don't. You can let it wash over you like any other sound. But if your mind is still active, if the analytical part of you is still reaching for something to engage with, here is something genuinely worth the engagement. Petra is not a ruin. Hold that word for a moment, ruin. It implies something broken, something that was whole and is now incomplete. But Petra was carved from living rock, and living rock does not break in the way that built things break. It weathers. The edges of carved figures soften over centuries into something gentler than sharp. The outlines of faces in the niches blur into suggestion. But the chambers remain, the doorways remain, the great facades remain. The channels and cisterns and colonnaded streets remain. The city is still inside the mountain, exactly where it was placed, waiting with the particular patience that only stone has mastered. The people who built it were called the Nabataeans. They were Arab traders of extraordinary sophistication, a civilization that controlled the ancient incense and spice roads for 5 centuries, from roughly 400 years before the Common Era, until the Roman annexation of their kingdom in 106 of the Common Era. If frankincense burned in a Roman temple, if silk arrived at a Greek market, if myrrh reached an Egyptian embalming ceremony, there was a very good chance it had passed through Petra first, carried by Nabataean merchants along routes so harsh and so carefully guarded that for centuries the source of the incense road remained unknown to the outside world. The Nabataeans were deliberate about this obscurity. When Diodorus Siculus, a Greek historian writing in the 1st century before the Common Era, described them, he noted that they were especially fond of freedom, and that they lived in the open air, and that they did not use wine. Some of this was exaggeration for rhetorical purposes, but the essential truth it was reaching for was accurate. The Nabataeans valued mobility and discretion over monument. They kept their routes secret, they kept their methods secret, and they kept the location of their capital, this carved city in a hidden canyon, remarkably unknown to the wider ancient world for centuries. They were not builders in the ordinary sense of the word. Most ancient civilizations quarried stone from the earth, transported it on human and animal backs across great distances, and assembled it piece by piece into the forms they imagined. The Nabataeans looked at the sandstone cliffs and approached the problem from the other direction. They looked at what was already there, at the geological accident of rose-red sandstone cliffs, soft enough to carve with iron tools, but hard enough to hold its shape indefinitely once carved, and they removed what was not needed. They left behind what was: doorways, chambers, columns, pediments, stairways, and halls, carved with such precision that some ceilings still require no mortar after 20 centuries. The rock holds itself. It has always held itself. Here is what most visitors do not expect. Standing in front of the great facades, the Nabataeans themselves did not live inside the carved structures. The great monuments, the treasury, the royal tombs, the monastery 344 steps above the valley floor, were ceremonial and funerary. The Nabataeans lived in tents beside them. They were, at their heart, nomadic people, traders who had learned to move, to adapt, to make home out of attention, rather than fixed geography. The carved structures were not houses, they were statements. They were the city's formal face, the part it showed to merchants arriving after months on the road, the part that said, "We are substantial, we are permanent, we have been here long enough to carve mountains." And the tents beside those carved facades said, "And we are free." The city supported 20,000 people in a desert without a river. They did it with water, with an understanding of water so precise and so patient that it remains one of the most impressive feats of engineering in the ancient world. The sick, the narrow gorge that serves as the only formal entrance to the inner city, 1.2 kilometers long, only 3 meters wide in places but up to 80 meters tall, is not simply a natural feature that the Nabataeans were fortunate to have. Walk its walls closely, and you will find something extraordinary carved into the living rock, at roughly shoulder height, channels. On one side, a channel cut directly into the sandstone, smooth and precise and deliberate. On the other side, the remains of a terracotta pipe system, fired clay tubes fitted together along the full length of the gorge, carrying water from a spring in the hills outside the canyon. In the rainy season, brief, irregular, often violent, water fell in the highlands around Petra and ran down toward the canyon in flash floods that were genuinely dangerous, capable of killing everything in their path. The Nabataeans studied those floods for generations. They learned exactly where the water came from, exactly which paths it preferred, exactly where it pooled and where it was lost to sand, and then they redirected it. They built dams at the mouths of side canyons to hold the floodwater. They cut channels to carry it from the holding dams to a series of cisterns carved into the cliff face above the city. They built settling tanks to remove sediment. They created a distribution system so complete that not one drop of the annual rainfall was allowed to go to waste. Less than 100 millimeters of rain per year, less than the width of your hand, measured as depth in an entire year. And from that, they made enough for 20,000 people. You can still run your fingers along those channels tonight as we walk through the sick. The cuts are precise and deliberate, the right width for a hand, running along the wall at a height that a person walking could reach without effort, because they were made for hands not unlike yours, and the hands that carved them knew exactly what they were building. Someone understood that and carved it. And the understanding has been in the stone for 2,000 years, waiting for a hand to find it. The Nabataean kingdom came to its formal end when the Roman Emperor Trajan annexed it in 106 of the Common Era, folding it into the new province of Arabia Petraea. For perhaps another 2 centuries, Petra remained a significant city. The Romans paved its main street with their characteristic limestone slabs, built their characteristic columned porticos, added a theater and public baths in the Roman style, and generally applied their civic grammar to a place that had been grammatically complete without it. Then, in the year 363, a large earthquake struck the region. It destroyed much of the freestanding Roman construction. The colonnaded porticos fell, the paved street buckled. Many of the freestanding buildings that the Romans had erected, built with stacked stone rather than carved from living rock, collapsed entirely. The carved Nabataean structures, being literally part of the mountain, were unaffected. After the earthquake, the trade routes had already begun their long, slow migration to maritime paths along the Red Sea. The land roads lost their primacy. The merchant caravans found other passages. The city that had been built on the movement of goods between distant places found that the goods were moving by other routes now, and there was no longer a reason for 20,000 people to live in a sandstone canyon in the Jordanian highlands. The population declined over the following centuries. Byzantine Christians built a cathedral in the Urn tomb, one of the great royal tomb facades, converting a Nabataean ceremonial space into a Christian church without rebuilding a single wall. By the 7th century, when Islam swept through the region, Petra had perhaps a few hundred inhabitants. By the 12th century, the Crusaders built a small fort on one of the high ridges and noted the ruins below. By the 15th century, virtually nobody. For roughly 1,000 years, the only people who lived in and around the carved chambers were Bedouin families, the Bedouin tribe, specifically, whose ancestors had been in this canyon for so many generations that they had stopped counting. They knew the south-facing chambers that held warmth longest into winter. They knew the cisterns that filled first in the rains. They knew the carvings so intimately that they did not call them monuments, they called them rooms. Because that is what they were, rooms in a mountain, rooms that had been waiting quietly and without impatience for someone to come home to them. In 1812, a Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt disguised himself as an Arab pilgrim and persuaded a local guide to take him into the canyon. He was the first European to see Petra in over 1,000 years. He described it afterward as a rose-red city half as old as time. The phrase became famous. The city became gradually known, and the Bedouin families were eventually moved out in the 1980s when the Jordanian government designated Petra a protected archaeological site and built a new village nearby. They went, and the city remained as it had always remained, exactly as itself. The rose-red cliffs, the carved doorways, the water channels in the walls of the sick, the smooth stone floors worn by the feet of merchants who have been gone for 19 centuries. Still here, waiting as stone waits, not impatiently, not with any expectation of recognition, simply present, simply continuous, simply available to whoever comes next. Tonight, that is you. The entrance to the sick is a cleft in the rock that seems, at first approach, like a wall. You stand before it in the last warmth of the afternoon, the wide desert sky behind you, the open landscape of the Wadi Musa Valley falling away in the distance, the smell of warm sand and dry herbs in the air. Ahead, there is simply a gap in the rock, narrow, slightly reluctant looking, as though the mountain is revealing this path only because it has decided you are ready for it. We are walking in now 10. You step through the first narrowing, and the world changes. The sunlight is still with you here at the entrance, falling across the sand in long, warm diagonals, illuminating the base of the canyon wall. The walls are already taller than any building you have recently been inside. You take a step, and then another, and the walls begin their slow rise on either side. 9. The sky narrows above you to a long, irregular strip of blue, and the air shifts, cooler now. The canyon drawing its own breath, exchanging the hot desert air above for the cooler air that has been resting in the shade of the gorge since before sunrise. Behind you, the open landscape. Ahead, the gorge taking a slow curve to the left, the last of the flat horizon disappearing as the walls close in. 8. The walls are closer. You can feel their shadow before you feel their temperature. The light changes from direct to reflected, softer, more even, bouncing between the two facing surfaces of sandstone in a way that removes all harsh angles and leaves only the rose-red color deepening as you go further in. The layers in the stone are visible at eye level, cream to amber to deep, ochre to a rose that has something almost violet in it, each layer a different era, each era compressed into a few centimeters. 7. The canyon turns. What was behind you disappears entirely. The open world, the valley, the sky, the smell of the desert above is gone. There is only what is ahead, the walls narrowing, the sand underfoot soft and fine. And along the left wall, at shoulder height, the carved water channel begins, running the length of the sick from the spring outside to the cisterns within. You trail your fingers along its edge as you walk, and the stone is cool, and the channel is the exact width of an open hand. 6 footsteps on sand, nothing else. The sound of them is absorbed immediately by the walls, not echoing, not reverberating, simply taken. The canyon accepts the sound of walking without returning anything. The silence is not empty. It is full of the absence of everything that usually fills silence. 5, narrower still, both walls within reach if you extend your arms. The rose-red layers in the stone are swirling now at eye level, not flat horizontal stripes, but folded, compressed, the geological record of forces that took millions of years to arrive at this particular arrangement of color. The iron in the sandstone, oxidizing slowly over geological time, giving the stone its color. Not a surface color, a color all the way through. If you cut this wall in any direction, you would find the same rose red all the way to the other side. 4. The light is long and golden now, neither bright nor dim. The quality of light in a room where the curtains have been drawn against the late afternoon sun. Not dark, the specific quality of light that has passed through something warm before it reaches you. 3. The sound of your breathing, soft and regular, held and returned very slightly by the walls, so that the breath fills the small space of the gorge just enough to be felt. Your breath in the canyon in a quiet conversation. 2. Something ahead. A brightness at the far end of the gorge, between the walls. The narrowing of everything begins to open. A widening you can see before you can understand it. 1. The sick delivers you. You are standing at the end of the gorge and rising before you, filling the entire frame of the canyon opening, leaving nothing else to look at, requiring nothing else to be looked at is the treasury. Take a moment. Simply take a moment before doing anything else. 40 meters tall. Carved from a single cliff face, not assembled from pieces, but removed from what was already there. Columns, a broken pediment, circular niches, a tholos at the top, still intact after 2,000 years of desert wind, an occasional earthquake, and the long, slow patience of being stone in a place that has not changed its fundamental nature in a very long time. It is rose red in the evening light, amber where the light catches the upper surfaces, and at this precise hour between sunset and darkness, it becomes a color that has no single English name, deep rose and warm ochre and something faintly violet all at once, and the color moves as the light moves, as though the stone itself is slowly breathing. The scale does something to the mind that is worth noting. Your eyes reach for a category, architectural, geological, and find it belongs in both and neither. It is too vast to feel like something made by hands, and too deliberate to feel like something made by time alone. And in that reaching without finding, the mind does something useful. It quiets. It stops managing. When you encounter something too large to categorize, the part of you that spends its energy categorizing things goes still. Let that stillness happen. Lower your attention from the treasury to the ground beneath your feet, sand and compressed stone, worn smooth by centuries of passing merchants, pilgrims, Roman soldiers, crusaders, Bedouin families, and then the slow widening stream of visitors who have been coming since Burckhardt's 1812 account reached the wider world. All of those feet on this floor, all of that weight received by this ground over this amount of time, and now yours. Move closer to the canyon wall to your left, not the treasury itself, but the red cliff beside it. Press your hand against the stone. It is warm, not sun hot. It has been in shadow for several hours now, but warm in the specific way of something that has been receiving warmth all day on behalf of something else. The Nubian sandstone of Petra holds heat differently from other stone. It is relatively porous, and porous materials absorb slowly and release slowly, so that in the hours before midnight, when the desert air above is genuinely cold, the walls of the canyon are still warm to the touch. Not comfortable warm, warm in a way that feels very slightly like intention, like the stone kept something for you. The texture beneath your palm is not rough and not smooth. There is grain to it, a softness, almost a very slight give that stone should not have but does. If you look closely at the surface where your hand is resting, you can see the geological layers at a fine scale. Each one a slightly different color, a slightly different texture, a different mineral composition laid down in a different era of the Earth's long life. The iron is what makes it rose red, hematite, oxidizing over millions of years, turning the desert mountains the color of something living. Remove your hand and bring it to your nose. There is something on your fingers, the smell of the stone, mineral and dry and faintly warm, something that is almost metallic and almost organic and is neither exactly. The smell of very old rock that has been heated and cooled for longer than anything alive has been alive. It is a smell that exists nowhere else. You would recognize it if you smelled it again in another life as belonging specifically to this place. Now listen. Start with what is absent. The hum of machinery is absent. The sound of traffic is absent. The ambient electrical noise of a modern inhabited world, the refrigerators and air conditioners, and the thousand small motors of daily life, all of it, gone. The silence that remains is not the silence of a quiet room or a library or a garden at night. It is a more complete silence, the kind that takes a moment to recognize as silence rather than as something else. And within that silence, from somewhere very high above, from somewhere in the pink strip of sky still visible above the canyon rim, a single sound, a dove, so distant, so cushioned by the stone between it and you, that by the time it reaches the floor of the canyon, it is more vibration than sound, a note held in the stone itself rather than in the air. This is what 2,000 years of quiet sounds like. Stand here for as long as there is the feeling of needing to stand here. The cool mineral air of the canyon moves past you in a slow current, barely perceptible, almost more sensation than movement, carrying the faint trace of the wild herbs that grow in the rock crevices far above. Something resinous and ancient, something that might be called sage or thyme or juniper, but is none of these exactly. A desert plant whose name does not matter, making its slow, patient life in the stone above a city that has been here for 20 centuries and will be here for 20 more. You are standing in the oldest available silence, and the silence is receiving you. Move slowly into the open body of the ancient city. Beyond the Treasury, the canyon opens into a wide valley, and the ruins of a civilization arrange themselves around you with the quiet authority of things that have been here a very long time and are not going anywhere. The valley is wide, perhaps 200 meters from cliff face to cliff face, and the sky above opens into the deep blue of a desert evening, the first stars arriving in the east with a confidence that suggests they have been doing this for longer than the civilization below has. The Collonaded Street runs through the center of the valley floor. Walk onto it now. It was Rome's contribution to this place, a wide avenue paved with flat limestone slabs, lined with columns at regular intervals on both sides, the Roman way of saying, "This is the center. This is where commerce happens. This is where the city is most itself." The columns are mostly fallen now, lying at their original spacing on the valley floor, the grass and desert shrubs growing up between them. They do not look ruined in the way that rubble looks ruined. They look like something that has simply decided to be horizontal, as though one evening the columns of an ancient city looked at each other and came to a collective agreement about what rest means, and lay down and found that rest agreeable and have been resting there ever since. The scale of the fallen columns is surprising at this level. Standing, they were perhaps 8 meters tall. Lying, each drum of column takes up a significant portion of the pavement. Walk between them carefully, your feet finding the gaps between the stones, the sound of your footsteps soft and irregular on the ancient paving. The earthquake of 363 brought them down in a matter of seconds. Not one by one, not gradually over centuries of weathering. One moment they were standing. Then the ground moved. Then they were lying exactly as you see them now, and they have been lying exactly as you see them now for over 1,600 years. 1,600 years of exactly this. There is something in this that is not sad. Or rather, there is something in it that moves through sadness and comes out the other side into something more like the quality of things that have finished. Endings are not diminishments, they are completions. And completion has its own weight, not the weight of effort, not the weight of loss, but the specific gravity of something that was and then was done being what it was and rested. The columns rest. Walk to the north side of the street, where a row of shop facades is still partially visible in the cliff base, small square rooms carved directly into the rock at street level, their carved door frames intact, their interiors empty. These were the market stalls and workshops of Roman-era Petra. A butcher may have worked in this one, a spice merchant in that one, a leather worker further along. The smell of the street on a market day 2,000 years ago would have been layered and complex. Incense from Arabia, cured leather, fresh slaughtered meat, the dust raised by camels being unloaded in the square further east, the particular fermented smell of the wine imported from the Mediterranean coast at great expense. None of that remains. What remains is the carved doorframe, the threshold stone, the exact height of the ceiling inside the small room, which is the height of a person who lived in this canyon 2,000 years ago and was not substantially different from you. Step inside one of the small rooms for a moment. The air changes, cooler, more enclosed, the mineral smell of the stone more concentrated. The carved ceiling is close above the walls on 3 sides, a single rectangle of evening light at the entrance behind you. In this room, something was measured and exchanged, A transaction happened here that both parties considered fair or not fair and went on to other transactions. A person sat in this room in the heat of the midday and thought about water, about the road ahead, about a family somewhere at a distance, about what the frankincense was worth this season compared to last season, about whether the camels needed new sandals on their feet. Ordinary thoughts, the most ordinary thoughts in the world. In a room carved into the inside of a mountain 2,000 years ago, in a desert canyon in Jordan, a person had thoughts indistinguishable from the thoughts you have had today. And then they went home, and then they were gone, and the room remained exactly as it is now. Step back out into the evening light of the street. The body is a little looser than when you entered the sick. Something in the analytical mind has been genuinely engaged with real material, with verifiable history, with the specific humanity of carved rooms and falling columns, and the patience of stone, and in being engaged, it has been releasing its grip on the concerns it arrived with. The background noise of ordinary worry is a little quieter than it was at the entrance to the canyon. You might notice that, without needing to celebrate it, walk toward the western end of the valley, where the cliff faces rise on both sides and the carved facades become more densely arranged. The royal tombs on the eastern cliff face are visible from here, their facades tall and elaborate, some of them 3 stories of carved columns and broken pediments, weathered now to a rough approximation of their original precision, but still recognizably deliberate. The largest of them, the urn tomb, has a wide platform in front of it that was once the forecourt of a significant funerary monument, and later, when the Byzantine Christians arrived in the 4th century, became the entrance court of a cathedral. A Nabataean tomb, then a Christian church, then a tourist site, then, on evenings like this one, simply a carved space in a cliff, as it always was before it was anything else. Follow the path that runs along the base of the western cliff, away from the main valley and into a narrower side canyon. The path here is unpaved sand and compressed stone, the centuries having worn what was once a more formal route into something closer to its geological origins. Desert shrubs grow along the edges, low and tough and precisely the color of dry stone. A lizard, somewhere on the rock above, makes a sound that is more percussion than voice, a brief dry clicking, and is gone. The water channel runs along the base of the wall here, at about knee height, lower than the sick channel, cut to follow the natural gradient of the terrain, guiding any water that falls in this section of the canyon toward the cisterns further south. Reach down and run your fingers along the inside of the channel. Smooth, not polished smooth, not the smoothness of something intentionally finished, the smoothness of something that water has moved through for a very long time. The Nabataean iron tools cut the channel to a specific depth and width, and then for generations, for centuries, the water came through it in the rainy season and took the slight roughness of the cut and replaced it with this, smooth in the specific way that only moving water over a long time produces, a smoothness that took patience to arrive at. Think for a moment about the person who cut this channel. Not the engineer who designed the system, although that person existed, and had a sophisticated mathematical understanding of hydraulics that would not be matched in this region for another 1,000 years. Think about the worker with the iron chisel, kneeling where you are kneeling on this stone in this heat, working slowly, methodically, cutting a groove through sandstone that gave slightly under the tool but not too much, working at a pace determined by the stone, not by any schedule, because the stone has no schedule. The stone simply is, and resists at the rate that stone resists, and eventually yields at the rate that stone yields, and there is no point in arguing with it about the timeline. That worker knew they were building something for people who were not yet born. They may not have thought of it in those terms, but the calculation was there in the act itself. You don't cut a water channel through living rock if you're thinking about next season. You cut it if you're thinking about the city that will need water in 10 years and 50 years and 100 years. The channel itself is an act of care extended forward through time, offered to people whose faces could not be imagined, whose names would never be known, whose lives the channel cutter could not predict, but could nonetheless provide for. The channel has been providing for 2,000 years. Your fingers are in it now. Continue along the path as it curves toward the base of the cliff and arrives at a place where the sandstone face is covered, at shoulder height, with a dense accumulation of carved marks. Not decoration, not art in the conventional sense. Nabataean script, flowing cursive, the letters joined in long horizontal lines that run from right to left across the stone. These are travelers' inscriptions, people who stopped at this spot on their way into the city or on their way out, on their way to Damascus or Egypt or the Arabian coast, and carved a few words into the wall before continuing. The inscriptions are prayers mostly, requests for safe passage, for the road to hold, for the camels to remain strong, for the water to last, for the family at the other end to still be there on arrival. Written in a script that would evolve over the following centuries of Arabic linguistic development into the writing system used across the Arab world today. These letters carved into this wall 2,000 years ago are the direct ancestors of the letters currently written in Jordan and Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Iraq and everywhere else the Arabic script reaches. Crouch down and look at one of the inscriptions at eye level. The letters are about 2 centimeters tall, carefully made, not hasty, not scratched urgently. Someone took time here. Someone had a chisel or a sharpened metal tool and a particular message to leave, and they took the time to leave it clearly. The stroke of each letter is confident. This person had written before. Touch one of the letters very lightly. A person's words are under your fingers. They asked for something. Standing approximately where you are standing, in approximately this quality of desert evening light, they wanted the road to be shorter than the distance. They wanted the water to be enough. They wanted to arrive. Whether they arrived, whether the camels held, whether the water lasted, whether the people at the other end were still there, the stone does not record, it records only the asking. And the asking has lasted 2,000 years, still legible, still present, still the specific shape of what one person needed in the specific moment they needed it. That is enough. The asking was enough. Your breath has been finding its own rhythm while you have been crouching here, slower than when you entered the canyon. The analytical mind, given this genuinely interesting material to work with, has been running it to completion, and in running to completion it has been releasing, quietly and without announcement, the grip that keeps the waking mind at the surface. Stand slowly and walk further into the quieter reaches of the canyon. The further you go from the valley floor, the quieter it becomes. Not gradually in the way that sound diminishes with distance, but categorically as though the canyon has a threshold somewhere in this narrowing of the path past which a different quality of quiet exists. The valley behind you, with its fallen columns and carved shop fronts, and the occasional whisper of the evening wind across the open space, belongs to one register of quiet. This section of the canyon, narrower, more enclosed, the walls curving toward each other above, belongs to another. Stop walking. Stand still for a moment and simply be present in what this place is. The walls rise on both sides to a height that is difficult to estimate from the bottom of the gorge. The sky above is a narrow strip of deep blue, the color it becomes in the hour after the sun has left it, but before the stars have fully populated it, a long, irregular ribbon of deep blue framed by rose-red stone on both sides. Now notice something? The air is moving. Not a wind, nothing as definite as a wind. A barely perceptible current rising from the warm stone of the canyon floor and the warm stone of the walls, exchanging itself with the cooler air above, in and out very slowly. In the hour between sunset and full dark, the canyon does this, exhales the warmth it has been holding all day, slowly through the opening at the top. It is almost exactly the pace of a sleeping breath. You may notice, if you are still enough, that your own breathing has been finding that pace, not because you directed it there, because stillness has a way of synchronizing things. The body, placed in proximity to a slower rhythm, tends toward that rhythm without being asked. Your breath is a little slower than it was at the Treasury, a little deeper. The canyon's slow exchange and your own slow exchange happening at roughly the same pace, in the same enclosed space, for reasons that require no management. Let that be happening. Time has been passing differently in this canyon than it passes in ordinary places. You may have noticed this, or you may notice it only now that it's named. The canyon does not organize time the way that clocks organize time, the way that schedules organize time, the way that the daily pressure of appointment and deadline and measured duration organizes time in the ordinary world. In a canyon of rose-red sandstone in the desert highlands of Jordan, time is geological. The light changes, but at the pace of the Earth's rotation rather than the pace of a day's agenda. The shadows move across the walls, but they move at the speed of the world itself, which is a speed too slow for a person trying to get somewhere to track, and exactly the right speed for a person who has finished trying to get somewhere for the night. Minutes may feel like longer than minutes right now, or they may feel like less. The tracking of duration requires a specific kind of attention, the monitoring function, the part of the mind that keeps tabs on how long things are taking, that manages the anxiety of time passing without productivity. That function is not currently engaged. It began its slow disengagement somewhere around the water channels, and it has been releasing further with each part of the canyon you have moved through. You are not supervising the night. The night is passing while you are inside this canyon, and you were not asked to supervise it, and it is doing perfectly well without supervision. The body knows this. It has known it since the first breath inside the sick. And the knowing is already in the weight of the limbs, heavier than they were at the entrance, in the breath, slower than it was at the entrance, in the quality of attention, wider, softer, less directed toward any particular object, more simply present in the general field of what exists around you. Something has been shifting since you first walked in. Something is shifting still. The path widens here, very slightly. On the right side of the canyon, at the base of the cliff, a broad ledge of sandstone extends outward from the wall, perhaps 2 meters wide, and running along the wall for a length of 4 or 5 meters. It is not a natural formation, or not entirely. The stone was here already, a natural projection of the cliff base, but Nabataean hands shaped it, flattened the top surface, removed the irregular outcroppings, created something level and deliberate, worn smooth. By centuries of use, by the same mechanism as the water channel, by the same principle that smooth things smoothed by use are the patient repetition of contact over time. Travelers stopped here, set down their loads, sat, lay down, rested in the shade of the canyon wall during the heat of the midday. or stayed the night if the city gate was closed, or simply paused here for the pleasure of pausing in a place designed for pausing in a canyon that rewarded stillness. All of that weight received by this stone over this length of time. And now yours. Come to the ledge slowly. The body has been moving toward rest for the entire length of this canyon, and the ledge is what the movement has been moving toward. The nearer you get to it, the more the pace slows, as though each step toward the ledge requires a little less energy than the last, as though the approach itself is a form of deepening. Sit first. The stone beneath your hands as you lower yourself onto it is smooth and warm. Warm in the specific way of the canyon stone, not surface warmth, but deep warmth, the warmth of something that absorbed heat slowly through the hours of the day and is now releasing it slowly through the hours of the night at the pace of stone rather than the pace of surface things. You can feel it through the palms of your hands, through the backs of your legs. Now lie down. The stone receives the back of your head first. The weight of the skull, which is considerable. The skull is one of the densest bones in the body, and its weight, when finally surrendered, is a significant release. The back of the head against the warm stone, and the stone receiving it completely, without any give but without any resistance either. Simply there, simply solid, simply present. The shoulders come next, releasing into the stone. The shoulder blades, those two flat bones that have been carrying the wings of the day's tension, spreading against the surface, not pressing down into the stone, but being received by it. The distinction matters. You are not forcing anything into this surface. The surface is simply present beneath you, and the weight of your body, given the opportunity to go somewhere, goes there. The length of the spine against the warm sandstone, each vertebra finding its contact with the surface, not all at once, but in a slow sequence from the top of the back to the base, the spine settling into its full length with the particular quality that only horizontal rest produces. The spine was not designed to be vertical for the duration of a human day. It has been enduring verticality all day, and the return to horizontal is a relief so deep it almost has a sound. The hips, dense, downward, the full weight of the pelvis releasing into the stone, and the stone receiving it with the absolute indifference of something that has been receiving weight for millions of years, not indifference in the cold sense, indifference in the way of perfect, unconditional acceptance. The acceptance that has no preference, no judgment, no weariness, no limit. The legs, extending from the hips down to the feet, the weight of them real and specific, moving into the stone. And the feet that have been bearing the weight of the whole day, that have been carrying everything forward step by step, resting now against the warm surface. The weight of the feet releasing, the feet themselves releasing. Your arms are somewhere beside you, their weight fully given to the surface, your hands open. Not tired, not simply relaxed, not the heaviness of effort, the heaviness of things that have finished. Not the cool of damp stone, the cool that comes from a surface that has found its permanent temperature and stays there, in all seasons and all weather, as reliable as anything available in the world. Not sleep yet. Something just before sleep, the country at the edge of it, the territory that has no name because the people who could name it have already crossed into sleep and are no longer available to do the naming. The stone beneath you is not getting tired. It will not shift. It will not adjust. It will not need anything from you in the hours while you rest on it. It has been receiving what is placed on it for 20 centuries and has not once needed anything in return. That is the surface you are lying on, and it holds everything. At the far end of the ledge, there is an old man. He was already there when you arrived, or perhaps he arrived without your noticing. His arrival so quiet, so consistent with the quality of the canyon that it registered as simply part of what the canyon is. He is seated with his back against the cliff wall, his legs extended in front of him on the stone, and he is looking at the far wall of the canyon across the path, looking at the layers in the sandstone, the geological record of something that took millions of years to happen, compressed into a vertical span that a person could walk across in 2 steps. He is old, the particular oldness of someone who has been in this canyon most of their life. The skin of his face is the color of the lighter-toned sandstone, and the lines in it run in approximately the same directions as the geological layers in the wall he is looking at. He holds a long string of prayer beads in his left hand, and the beads are moving, not counting, just moving, the hand finding its own rhythm as the hand of someone who has been doing this for decades finds its own rhythm. He does not look at you when you arrive. He does not need to. After some time, it is difficult to say how much time. The canyon does not lend itself to the tracking of duration. He reaches to his left without looking and produces a small clay cup. He sets it on the stone between you. The steam rises from it in a thin, perfectly straight column in the still air of the canyon, rising until it is high enough to catch the last light above the rim and become briefly visible as a curl of silver before disappearing. Tea, brewed from the wild herbs that grow in the rock crevices above, the same herbs that carry their faint resinous smell on the evening air. The smell of the cup is sage and something else slightly mineral, as though the water had passed through the stone itself on its way to the small fire and picked up something of the stone's character along the way. You lift the cup with both hands. It is warm in a way that requires no description. The warmth moves from the cup through the palms of your hands, slowly, at the pace that warmth moves through stone, not rapidly, not dramatically, but completely, from the palms into the wrists, from the wrists into the forearm, from the forearms into the elbows, the upper arms, and from there into the chest receiving warmth from the arms, and the chest itself warming, and from the chest into the belly, and the belly warming the way a deep warmth warms from within, spreading outward, the kind of warmth that does not cool quickly because it came from deep in rather than settling on the surface. You drink slowly. The old man, looking at the canyon wall, says something quietly. His voice is low, the voice of someone who speaks in places where low is the right volume. He speaks in a language that you understand without recognizing. He says, "The canyon holds everything that was given to it." He does not elaborate. He doesn't appear to consider elaboration necessary. The prayer beads continue their slow movement in his hand, not counting, not measuring, simply the rhythm of an old hand that has found, over the course of a long life in a sandstone canyon, the pace at which things move when they are not being made to move at any particular pace. You look at the canyon wall, the layers of rose-red stone in the failing light, each layer a different era, each era contained, complete, sealed inside the one above it. The stone has been holding all of those eras for the duration of their existence, the era of the sea that covered this land in prehistory, the era of the desert that replaced it, the era of the Nabataean city, the era of the Roman province, the era of the Byzantine church, the era of Bedouin families living in the carved rooms, the era of the tourist arrivals, all of it held in sequence, in layers in the rose-red wall. The canyon holds everything that was given to it. At some point in the quiet that follows, you notice that the old man is no longer at the end of the ledge. He went somewhere, through a gap in the canyon wall that you hadn't noticed before, or further along the path, or simply into the stone. He went where he needed to go next, and there was nothing remarkable about it, and there is no sense of loss in his absence. What he left is still here, the warmth in the hands from the cup, the warmth in the chest from the warmth in the hands. The quality of stillness that inhabited him, which the canyon absorbed while he sat in it, and which is still present in the air of this specific section of the canyon, as though stillness, like warmth, can be stored in stone and released slowly. The cup in your hands is still warm. The stone beneath you is still warm. The canyon wall is rose red in the last light, and in the upper corner of the cliff face, high above, there is a small carved niche, a votive alcove, made for a small clay figure of a god of safe passage. The niche is empty. The figure is gone, taken by time or by hands, centuries ago, but the niche remains, the exact size of what it once held, the exact size for a small, specific offering. Rest, perhaps, is its own kind of offering. At the base of the ledge, where the canyon wall meets the path, there are 8 steps cut into the stone, going inward, going down, not grand stairs. The kind of steps that form when generations of feet have worn a path into stone, and the stone has been shaped gently to make that path more reliable. Each step perhaps 20 centimeters deep. The stone of each step worn concave in the center, where the feet have been. Stand slowly. The body is heavier than when you lay down. Not uncomfortably heavy, the heaviness of something that has been given permission to be its actual weight, without any held tension maintaining the performance of lightness. This is what the actual weight of a human body feels like when nothing is being held. Walk to the first step and descend. 8, the first step. The path descends into a narrowing of the canyon, the walls closer on both sides, the sky above narrowing to a thinner strip. The temperature drops by 1 degree, not the variable temperature of air responding to the weather above, the geological temperature of enclosed stone, the temperature of the earth itself, which has been the same here in all seasons, for as long as there have been seasons to measure, stable, permanent, the same in summer and winter, a temperature that does not negotiate with the weather. 7. The second step. The strip of sky above is narrower still. 4 or 5 stars are visible now in the deepening blue, very bright in the way that stars are bright when the air is desert dry and the horizon is stone rather than light pollution. They do not flicker. They are simply present, as they have been present above this canyon on every clear night for the duration of the canyon's existence. 6. The third step. The sound from the valley behind you, the faint movement of the evening wind across the open space, is gone now. Your breathing is the only sound. Your breath in this enclosed space is just barely audible, not loud, not intrusive, simply present, the most natural sound in the world. 5. The fourth step. The stone beneath your foot is very smooth, the concave worn center of this particular step, which has received thousands of feet before yours and will receive thousands more. The warmth of the ground comes up through the soles of your feet, into the feet themselves, into the ankles, into the legs, the warmth of stone that has been accumulating heat since before you arrived in this canyon. 4. The fifth step. The walls are very close now, both of them within arm's reach. The air between them is still, not stagnant, but still in the way of a room that has been undisturbed for a long time. Not the stillness of absence, the stillness of something that has been given enough time to settle into itself completely. 3. The sixth step. 1 breath in and out. 2. The seventh step. The dark is soft, not complete darkness. There is still the faint ambient glow of the canyon's stored warmth in the air above, and the two stars visible through the narrow opening overhead. Enough to see the stone of the walls on both sides. Enough to see the next step. 1. The 8th step. At the base of the 8th step, the passage opens into a chamber. 3 walls of rose-red sandstone, close enough that you could touch 2 of them simultaneously if you extended your arms. The ceiling is curved and low, carved to just above head height, worn smooth by the same slow processes that smooth everything in this canyon over enough time. The floor is flat, compressed stone, and through a narrow vertical slit in the eastern wall, perhaps 15 centimeters wide, cut deliberately, a thread of night sky is visible. 2 stars, absolutely still, lie down on the floor of the chamber. The stone receives everything. The back of the head, very heavy. The shoulders, lower now than anywhere else tonight. The entire length of the spine against the warm floor. And now the final movement. This chamber has been here for roughly 2,000 years. Others have lain here before you. Not tourists, workers, merchants, travelers who needed to be inside the rock before the night was over. They lay where you are lying and looked at whatever small piece of sky was visible through whatever small opening the chamber offered, and their breathing slowed and the stone held them. The Nabataean kingdom, gone. The merchants and the caravans, gone. The frankincense roots, gone. The Roman province of Arabia, Petra, gone. The Byzantine cathedral in the urn tomb, gone. The earthquake of 363 gone into the past where earthquakes go. The 6 centuries of near silence, complete. The Bedouin families in the carved rooms moved on. The rose-red rock, still here. The chamber, still here. The warmth of the stone, still here. The 2 stars through the slit in the eastern wall, still here as they have been here on every clear night since the chamber was carved, unchanged, unaware that anything has happened in the world below. 700 years before Petra was built, a poet wrote about the desert night. The stars do not know our names and do not need to. They are simply doing what stars do, being where they are, burning without urgency. The 2 stars through the slit in the wall are doing what stars do. Your body is doing what bodies do when they have been given enough stone and enough warmth and enough silence. The breath in and out, the stone beneath the back of the head. Warm, the shoulders released, the spine full length against the floor. Heavy, not uncomfortable, complete. The thoughts that come now are quieter than the thoughts that came an hour ago, and the thoughts that come in the next few minutes will be quieter than these. Not because anything has been suppressed or managed or carefully directed away from its natural course, simply because this is what happens when the body rests, and the analytical mind has completed its work, and there is nothing further to manage. The thoughts arrive and do not require engagement. They are like the sound of the old man's prayer beads, a rhythm that has nothing to prove, a movement that continues without agenda. The chamber rests, the canyon rests, the rose-red mountain, holding everything that was ever given to it, rests. And you, the 2 stars, the breath, the stone, the breath, the dark, the 2 stars through the slit in the wall. Still, the stone, still, the breath, stone, breath. The canyon rests, the mountain rests. You are resting only the stone, only the breath, only the dark. Good night.